That looked like a hostage video, didn't it?
It looked like
Jason Kidd was sitting there. I guess Nico was still on the scene.
Yeah.
And Kidd sitting there next to him, and they're in the aftermath, like the day after they traded Luka Doncic, and he literally looked like they're the old reveal that we talk about with Hank Aaron, talking about the Barry Bonds breaking his record, where they pull back and there are two guys with ski masks on and machine guns pointed at his head. As he says, "Well, yeah, I also saw this as a good move."
He's making no facial expressions.
Take a guy out of the lineup who's averaging 40 points a game.
Just went to the
and
finals.
throws in the other two stats for a triple-double as a matter of routine, even though he doesn't look like his vertical leap is more than a half inch. He's still grabbing 12 rebounds a game. How the hell is he doing that? He dishes off 12 assists and doesn't miss in the clutch. Sure, we're getting rid of that guy.
He's like, we just play with the guys we have. He looks scared.
That was one of the all-time phony press conferences. You know how we love it.
So
but, I mean, he looked stunned. He looked like he was on massive amounts of sedatives to sit down there and not be enraged the entire time.
The time. Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Tonight's the night. Is it going to be all right? Mike Lubie Lubitz, Jeff DeForest here with you as we join you on this Tuesday. Could be a Stanley Cup repeat clinching Tuesday night tonight. The town should be just electrified with a pulse like we've never seen before. I don't know that we're seeing that because people have cleared out, Lubie. Are the only people left in town Panther fans? Because there's nobody on the streets of South Florida anymore. It's steaming hot outside. It's just unbelievable. It's I used to like that song, "Feels Like I'm Walking on the Sun." That's kind of what it feels like when you're outside these days. But they're going to be inside tonight at the Merritt Bank Center. Is it Merritt Bank Center? I believe that's the name of the arena now. It's changed names more often than most people change underwear. It's unbelievable how many different designations that building has been associated with and destinations. And tonight, I think it's Destination Stanley Cup. I mean, is there any scenario in which Connor McDavid held in check, Leon Draisaitl somewhat held in check? This was in a couple of the games that the Panthers have dominated in the series. You've had 3 overtime games, so you can't completely discount the Edmonton Oilers. And yet, coming back to South Florida, I just, maybe it's a mistake, Lubie, to feel this comfortable, but I have a good feeling that tonight's going to be the night. What do you think, my friend? How are you?
I'm well. I'm hoping. I mean, we've seen this team smother them in multiple games in this series and going back to last year, but we've also seen this team let up from game to game. And within the same game, we've seen this team look at game 4 where they get up 3-0, and then the second period is night and day from the first period. Like, could Chuck said something interesting yesterday or one of the days when they had pressers, and he talked about Connor McDavid is hungry for it. We're hungry too. And that's one thing I will give this team credit. Every time they sort of fall off, they themselves get their act in gear, and not one of the games have they been blown out. So they get that this isn't going to be handed to them. They get that this Oilers team is talented. They are good, and they do want it. I mean, it's clear that this Oilers team wants it. It's also clear the Panthers are better. And I mean, if you look at, I get it when the Celtics and the Heat had that series and the Heat ended up winning it. And people are like, well, but the Celtics have led this many quarters. No one cares. It's the final score. I understand that. But there's something to be said for leading 80% of the time versus leading 20% of the time. It's, can you finish the games off? And right now they've finished more than the Oilers. It feels like tonight's the night. I've learned in hockey, you don't get ahead of yourself, especially when the Panthers were barraging them for 3 out of 4 periods, including an overtime, and then lose on nonsense. Like, hockey's a really, really, really weird sport where you can do everything imaginable and just not get the puck to go between the legs or over the right arm or over the left shoulder. Like, it feels like tonight's the night for the Florida Panthers, but I don't think it's going to be easy. Like, it doesn't feel like it's going to be like the 2 blowout victories we've seen in this series.
Atmosphere, checkbox, Florida Panthers. I mean, sitting there at home with a chance to wrap up a Stanley Cup The building is going to be just absolutely on fire. I guess you get Roberto Luongo out there to beat the drum to get the crowd even more intense before the game starts.
I think you have to.
Edmonton schlepping across the country, down 3-2 in a series, a precarious position in any sport when you're down 3-2. In the NBA, the team that leads 3-2 in a series, which Oklahoma City established a 3-2 lead over Indiana last night in the NBA final playoffs. 82% of the time, the 3-2 team, the team that's up 3-2, ends up winning in the NBA. Now, we know that's a chalk league. I believe what you said to be true. It's a little bit bizarre, hockey being more abstract than basketball. You could outplay a team and they catch a couple of fluke goals, goes in off the skate, off the hip of one of your defensemen. We have seen a certain level of schizophrenia in goal for both teams, but far more exaggerated by the fact that you don't even know who's going to start tonight for Edmonton. Did they announce whether it's going to be Skinner or Pickard?
You would think it's Skinner. Once a backup gets touched up, you go back to the starter. I don't know. I mean, look, the Panthers have been able to get to any goalie. The way that they play, it's not. We hope we have room. It's like the Oilers need certain things to happen for them to look good. The Panthers don't. The Panthers just need to play hard. Like that's the Panthers' whole MO is bringing such intensity that the other team doesn't have a chance to breathe. So that's why their system just works no matter who the goalie is. I don't care who their goalie. I've never cared who their goalie is. They played some of the best goalies ever. I mean, Shesterkin is one of the greatest goalies of all time, and they got through him. It's not about the goalie to me. For them, it's do they play their game? If they play their game, they're the best team in the sport for the last 3 years. It's been very clear. They just don't.
The contributors. I mean, if you look at it from the Florida Panthers, I mean, how many more guys? The fact that Marchand is possibly the Finals MVP,
he wasn't on the team
compared to what are you getting from the other people besides McDavid and Draisaitl? You have a couple of guys that are contributing or seem to be. Bouchard hasn't been all that good. He's usually a scoring presence. You don't have Zach Hyman in there. You pointed that out at the beginning of the series. I mean, and that may be a critical component of what ended up happening. But when you look at the bench of the Edmonton Oilers, who's really making any noise besides you see the excellence of McDavid. I love when he starts taking the puck to the middle of the ice there when they're at the offensive end, applies immense pressure, but the other players haven't been able to capitalize aside from Draisaitl. And yet you could throw 5 names out there for the Florida Panthers, and they've all been big contributors. Reinhart woke up. Tkachuk, as you said, you were poking Tkachuk to try and get back into action. He scores a couple of goals, nearly had a hat trick in game number 5. Just missed that. And what was that? That was game 4. Right. And they're getting contributions from, even without Verhaeghe being a big factor, that they're still getting contributions from many guys. So I think they just have, as Yogi Berra would say, the deep depth that they need and seem to be playing with the kind of style that is making Edmonton very uncomfortable. So final score tonight, Edmonton 3, Panthers nothing. Back to Edmonton for game 7. Did we just doom the Florida Panthers from winning the Stanley Cup back to back? I mean, think about this, the history of the whole thing. I go all the way back. I can trace it to its raw roots. When remember, there was an exhibition at the old Miami Arena, an exhibition that I believe featured Wayne Gretzky when he was with the LA Kings. Is that what happened? And they were doing this as some kind of litmus test to see if anybody would even show up for that game. And then there was talk, naturally, of putting a franchise here. You thought that was the longest of shots. Izinga gets that going, and you established a franchise. It wasn't as if the NHL was being particularly favorable to expansion teams, as they later became, realizing that the worst thing that you could do is put a new franchise in the league and have them suck for 20 years. But outside of those first 3 or 4 years, the Panther franchise did suck for over 20 years.
Yes.
Horrendous. They were awful. They were a forgotten commodity here in town.
Yep.
And I remember all of those optimistic press conferences where we thought we had an elite front office and that was going to trigger and inspire the team to actually be pretty decent from the start, from the outset. Bill Torrey was widely respected, 4 straight Stanley Cups that he orchestrated with the New York Islanders back in the day. You had Bobby Clark, one of the toughest guys ever to play the game with the Broad Street Bullies. He was at the helm there as a general manager. You had plenty of money behind the franchise with Wayne Huizenga, so you thought they had everything in place to be good from the beginning and for a long period of time. They kind of had a weird style that people objected to that kept them in games with the center ice trap and Roger Nielsen. They bring in our man Doug McLean in year number 3. They go all the way to the finals. They make the playoffs the ensuing year, get a new arena, and then disappeared. Vanishing act. So the fact that they're here on the doorstep of possibly winning a second straight Stanley Cup seemed unfathomable for the longest period of time, and puts them in the ranks of one of the better franchises ever to compete in the National Hockey League. And no real sign that this is going to disappear anytime soon. Doesn't seem to be. Is there any talk? We're going to have Scoop Skolnick on about 8:35 this morning, 5 Reasons Sports Network. And I would imagine, 5 Reasons Sports Network was largely based on their insane in-depth coverage of the Miami Heat.
Yes.
Would you think that they've pivoted off that a little bit, Lubie?
He's had a lot of Panthers stuff. He's been at every game. I think they've had people covering in Edmonton. They've been covering it really closely since, we haven't had local newspapers really be a big factor for the last few years.
Our man David Furones ended up on the coverage.
Yes, Furones, and also we know
Dave Hyde. Imagine that. They sent 2 people to Edmonton, the Sun Sentinel.
They did. Well, the Panthers are
now Herald sending people out there.
I don't know.
You would have to think
That's a good question. I have no idea.
Does the Herald still publish?
There.
That was the big paper in town for the longest period of time. Sun Sentinel had a great sports department. And think about that. They probably had what? Did they have 20 guys writing for the sports department?
Probably.
With the Sun Sentinel, all very good, very talented guys, well qualified. Our man Mike Mayo was part of that scene there with Dave Hyde. Jim Sarney was doing things, and they went probably 10 deep and very talented writers. They had 2 or 3 guys that were great on golf, for God's sake.
Yep.
Covered tennis, everything, but hard-pressed over the years now with a dissipating interest in daily newspapers, even online, to keep pace with that. I don't think they didn't even assign a guy. Did they have nobody covering the defending Stanley Cup champions on a regular basis in the local newspapers?
Oh, yeah, they didn't cover them during the year very much.
You're reading an Associated Press story? Panthers in first place after 4-2 victory over the Maple Leafs. And you see the byline is Associated Press, some schmuck from the AP. Not that they're schmucks, but
some guy. Yeah.
You don't get that feel from a guy that lives and dies every day with the local franchise. But should be a lot of fun watching that game tonight. And yet, Lubie, I'm surprised. What level of trepidation do you take into this thing? You normally would be just in total denial that there was any chance that Edmonton would pull this thing off. You're more or less implying that this is remains a pivotal Game 6, pivotal in the sense that either the season is over or back to Edmonton, where you would still give the Panthers a pretty heavy chance of pulling that game out. No?
Yeah, they have 2 shots to win the title. That's what it is. I just hope they're not considering it that way. You're at home. I hope they have Luongo do it because he was fantastic last year. We've seen all these guys doing it, and they just want to get it right. Luongo didn't care. Luongo literally was a madman. And
don't you want to break that thing if you're the guy that gets the assignment to beat the drum?
Absolutely.
You want to put a sledgehammer through that drum, no?
I hope they have him do it because he hit the living crap out of it, and he was so pumped. They had been in a malaise for 3 straight games, and whether it was practice, whether it was them realizing that was their moment, whatever it was, Luongo felt like he capped it off. And from that moment on, they played their guts out. And that's what you're going to need to do tonight. The Oilers aren't going to go away easily. I think they're the better team. I think they should win tonight. That doesn't mean that they will. We've seen this team.
Of course not.
And again, when you have McDavid and Draisaitl, you can't give them any space. You just can't.
All right, Luongo is doing it, according to my man Brian.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Good for them.
I think I saw that somewhere, that Roberto Luongo was going to be the guy, and one of the, of course, great players ever to wear the Panther sweater. They call it the sweater, right? The Panther jersey, and yeah, it should be very, very inspiring. Anyway, looking very much forward to it. I'm thinking the Panthers dictate the pace in this game. A level of desperation on the part of the Edmonton Oilers, I'm not sure that serves them well.
No, they don't play well that way. That's the thing. This situation, the Panthers play well that way. They don't. They're not actually whenever they try to get physical, it backfires on them. That's not their game. And it just plays into the Panthers' hands. Yes, this situation plays into the Panthers' hands from almost every angle. I just, again, penalty wise, Bobrovsky wise, like there's so many ways it can go wrong. So it's not to be a pessimist. It's I don't doubt for a second that they're going to take this game as seriously as they need to. We've watched them the last few years, and these moments sort of have to need that second chance. It happened last year. They had 3 chances. It took them to the 4th chance that we didn't even think about.
That was a stunning surprise. I'm not sure that happens again. Officiating, of course, will play a key role in this. Seems like Edmonton is taking a lot of stupid penalties. They got out of hand in that one game that they were getting blown out in and just started fighting. So, I mean, they've been at a disadvantage there. The Panther power play, their penalty kill has been outstanding all season and really been, as you say, I like the word that you're using now, oppressive. It's smothering.
Yes.
The penalty kill for the Panthers. They've been dynamite in that capacity, and Edmonton hasn't exactly been stellar in terms of scoring with these opportunities. They've squandered a lot of opportunities to get back in games on the power play. What are you thinking tonight? I mean, is this going to be a very tightly officiated game, or is I'm thinking they let them play a little bit? No, and of course the Panthers, as we said in that pivotal game 5, they ended up catching a huge break with a couple of calls that weren't made on blatantly obvious high sticks that took place. Now, in any game, in any sport, you're going to see officiating mistakes made. We had one yesterday, I thought, in what turned out to be an historic game, and I lucked out. I just happened to be flipping channels, came back from the walk of life, schwitzing, ready to pass out, 1,000 degrees outside, like I said, and I lay down on the bed for a minute there, flick on ESPN, and what's happening? There's a no-hitter going on in the College Baseball World Series. Yeah. This guy, Gage Wood, from Arkansas, is no-hitting Murray State. He's got a perfecto going into the 7th inning. He hits a guy, and then this was a weird one. In the 9th inning, the leadoff hitter, I guess it might have been the second guy that was, he had one away, I think, at the time, and he hits another guy in the elbow. And originally, they award the guy first base. And then, not that the perfect game was already blown. This didn't affect the no-hitter, but it certainly could have impacted both that and the outcome of the game if you have a base runner. Now you got the pitcher working out of the stretch. He's got the possibility, I don't know that the runner was going to be any kind of intimidating factor with threat to steal because they're down 3-0 in the 9th inning. But, yeah, and they ended up on a replay reversing the call. If a batter, now is this just in college baseball or is this in Major League Baseball as well? Where if you don't attempt to get out of the way of the pitch.
The guy ready leaning in.
He didn't lean in. He didn't do anything. I mean, look, you're at the plate. A guy's throwing 97 miles an hour the entire ball game. And a pitch is coming inside. You have less than a split second, literally, a fraction of a split second to make a decision. The pitch is sort of on the inside part of the plate, but it's now coming off. This guy's got a moving fastball. This one appeared to not have a lot of movement on it, but it hits him in the elbow pad as he's standing there thinking, hey, I probably have to swing at this pitch. Hits him. He doesn't really do much to get out of the way, but is that really the obligation of the hitter to get out of the way of that pitch where it ended up being the 3rd strike? And it either accounted for the first or second.
Oh, really?
Inning.
Oh, jeez.
On a replay reversal. I'm looking at that going, that's horrible. I mean, we've been talking a lot about blown officiating and bad calls. This Sam Burns thing continues to fester as everybody's looking at it. And I have to say, Sam Burns, the golfer, handled this as the epitome of class. He should have been fuming about not getting the relief that he needed from the lie that was in some standing water. It wasn't really in standing water, but the rule is that if the water is affecting your stance, that you should get some kind of relief. And so he's standing in, obviously, rain-soaked fairway turf and ends up shanking a ball that cost him any chance that he had to win the tournament. 2 guys looked at it. In the aftermath, people are saying, well, they should have given him a relief. But guess what? It's too late, baby. In this case, I don't know. I mean, it takes nothing away, in my opinion, from Gage Wood. He still had to come back and get another couple of outs, but yeah, the reversal was insane. I mean, what do you do, Libby? You're standing at the plate. You coach some baseball. Standing at the plate, are you? You don't even have time to think that, hey, I got to duck out of the way. You're actually thinking, I have to swing at this thing, and then all of a sudden it hits you. How can you blame that on the batter? I don't
It
get
feels
that.
like a college rule. It feels like they're trying to be uber safe. They don't want people leaning into pitches, so they're trying to do everything they can to have people get out of the way.
Who's going
Maybe,
to lean into a 97-mile-an-hour fastball?
but like that late in the game, you're not thinking about leaning. You're thinking about getting a hit. I don't know. That's a weird. And then to go and give a strike and then a strike out.
And ended up being the third strike on a guy, so now he's out.
Lot. That
Now, in the midst of a no-hitter, that seemed like a really cheesy call. I thought it was one of the worst decisions I've seen in instant
little
replay,
weird.
where normally their instinct is to go with what was called on the field. And if ever there was a case where I thought that should have stood, I'm looking at that thinking, if I'm at the plate, you don't have a lot of time to think, hey, why don't I let this hit me?
Nah.
There were times where that happens. I mean, some guy throws a curveball inside at 86 miles an hour, and you'll see guys. Don Baylor, I used to cover Don Baylor when he was with the Angels. He was a guy, I think he holds the record for being hit by a pitch the most times.
Well, he didn't care.
No, he was ducking into pitches. There's no doubt. He was hovering over the plate. This guy didn't do anything. I mean, if anything, you're thinking, I have no time to swing anyway. This guy's bringing it at almost 100 miles an hour. You can't put that on the batter, can you? It's not his fault that the ball was inside and clipped him.
That's a weird call.
Weird call, but taking nothing away. The kid was fantastic, and that was only the third no-hitter, and this is surprising. I mean, think about guys that have pitched college baseball World Series. You had those Texas teams with Clemens and Greg Swindell.
Yep.
You had your man from Florida State, Paul Wilson, who was seemingly unhittable when he was a college pitcher. You've had any number. Paul Skeens last year, or now with the Pittsburgh Pirates, or 2 years ago.
With Clemson was great. Yep, there was a lot of great college pitchers who went on to be great in the Strasburg. Yes, you've had a lot of these guys.
Strasburg.
Yep.
Oh, no hitters since 1960. I think was the last. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Now, I mean, you're not lifting a guy that has a no-hitter going, and he's throwing a conservative number of pitches. This guy was over 100. They weren't taking him out of the game, obviously, unless he gave up a hit. And even then, I think I would have left him in unless they have some kind of bizarre pitch count rule with this Gage Wood. But did a lot of good for himself. If he wasn't going to be a first-round pick before, he certainly is going to be now after what he did. But only 3 in history. The first one goes way back, and when we didn't even know the College World Series existed. It's kind of funny because when I was out in California, Rod Vado was the coach of USC, longtime coach. He was one of those guys like Ron Frazier that was credited with putting college baseball or keeping them in the spotlight enough where it eventually became very much in vogue to televise both the World Series and have a lot of attention paid to it. But before that, I mean, if you go back into the 70s, I don't think people... look, Tom Seaver pitched for USC, for Christ's sake.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, you've had so many guys that were great. So to have no hitters and you're thinking there have to be teams that made it into the College World Series where you're seeing a guy that is just so far ahead of everybody else that you're amazed he's not in the pros.
Yep.
So very surprising that happened yesterday. But controversy all over the place. So with the rules, OKC wins last night. Halliburton injured. Did anybody know that? That was a weird one. You're laying 9.5 with the Indiana Pacers. You're thinking that looks pretty tempting. They've been in every game, except game 2. They managed to lose by a substantial margin. But other than that, they've been extremely competitive. Halliburton ends up with 4 points in the game. He had a calf injury of some significance, not enough to keep him out. Supposedly he's going to play in game 6. But where does that leave you, Lubie? OKC with Halliburton.
If he's like that, they have no shot. I mean, and they hung around. I give them chance.
They got it within 2 after being down early. I mean, they were getting blown off the court.
They hung around. They kept it in single digits for a lot of the second half until around the 5-minute mark where it sort of blew up again. And they've been able to do that without Halliburton scoring a lot throughout the series, but he's been at least involved. He's been there defensively. He's been rebounding. He's been running the offense. Like it was night and day last night. I mean, and at some point, as you saw last night, they've grown enough parts on that team that if Siakam's able to do what he did later in that game, then they can hang around with the Thunder. But they're not going to win without Halliburton, especially late in the game. Like that, that's when it fell apart late. Was you didn't have Halliburton to keep them in it. McConnell gives you these bursts where he's really good for stretches.
Yeah.
Siakam, all these guys, Halliburton's their finisher. Halliburton's been their closer. And that's okay. And like people bitch about, oh, look at his numbers. If he comes in and closes, that's fine. Like everyone has a role. If they're winning that way, whatever. Every team's different. But he has to do that. If he's not doing that, it may not even be close this time. Like the Thunder may realize, oh, he's hurt. Let's just attack him. And because last night they sort of played it soft, trying to figure out what was going on. If you know a guy's hurt, it's a different animal, especially on the defensive end. Like they weren't overly being physical, which you would think they would if they knew a guy had an issue where he couldn't move. Yeah, we'll see what they can do in the next. Was it 3 days? I mean, they've been having a lot of time off between games.
Thursday is the next game.
Okay. Yeah, so it's 3 days.
So
So
they get a little time. I don't know if that helps.
maybe that can help him. Maybe they can give him some stuff. Maybe he can loosen it
Can't
up.
hurt him any.
You know, like a calf isn't great, but it's not a hamstring exactly. So maybe
It looked bad. You could see he was off.
he wasn't getting into the paint doing the floater, and that's been his one of the moves.
He would drive and fall down. He was kind of out of it. He was a
He didn't look good.
Yeah. So anyway, that certainly compromised any chance they had. It was weird. Rick Carlisle receiving some criticism. It's always great post-race handicapping. I told you the two couldn't lose. Yeah. Okay. Where's your money on? Oh, I got a ticket on the 5. Post-race handicapping. People are pointing at your man Rick Carlisle and saying that he should have kept McCollum in there and not bothered to go back to Halliburton because it was clear that he wasn't himself. And in the game before, Siakam never touched the ball in the fourth quarter when they fell apart, even though he's a very effective scorer and a veteran talent. And I'm going to say he has to be the only guy on the Pacers that's won a championship. He won with Toronto and Kawhi Leonard.
Yes.
And a very experienced and well-grounded guy. I tell you who impresses me, and I always like being overwhelmingly impressed with guys in post-game interviews, and I've seen this guy twice now, this Jalen Williams, who had 40 last night. What a well-composed, grounded individual for an NBA up-and-coming star, if he's not a star already. Have you seen interviews with the guy? I mean, it reminds me of like when I started seeing Josh Allen in post-game interviews, and I thought, how could you not like this guy, even though he plays for Buffalo?
Yeah.
Just one of these guys that says all the right things, but you can sense that he means it, that it's not BS. So very impressive young man, Jalen Williams. And now they're talking about him as the best number 2 option in basketball or becoming that. He was all of that last night with 40 points in a ball game. Gilgeous-Alexander did his thing. And Oklahoma City now commanding 3-2 lead going back to Indiana with the Pacers compromised once again because of a Halliburton injury. All right, Scoop Skolik's going to join us here in just a sec. There was some interesting baseball. Giancarlo Stanton came back last night. I posted a question on Facebook. Who would have more strikeouts? Shohei Ohtani pitching 1 inning for the Dodgers or Giancarlo Stanton coming back into the lineup? I don't know if Stanton struck out. He was 2 for 4. He actually had a pretty decent ball game. Yanks couldn't muster up a run. They lost to the Angels 1-0 in 11 innings. Ohtani pitched 1 inning, gave up a couple of hits, gave up a run, although it was a nail-biting play at the plate. Great throw from right field. Nearly got Tatis at the plate, but his hustle, believe it or not, Tatis, isn't he often accused of being a bit of a malingerer there? Flying around the bases, and he ends up with a slide just ahead of the tag. That put Ohtani in a situation where he now has a 9.00 earned run average.
Oh, Jesus.
1 inning of play. But no, he looked pretty good. You would have to be extremely encouraged to see Ohtani back out there on the mound. Hadn't pitched in 21 months or something like that.
Stanton had 1 strikeout. Ohtani had none.
He didn't strike anybody out? I thought he did. I thought he had a strikeout.
Or at least here it's saying there was 1 inning, 2 hits, 1 run, 1 earned run, no walks, no strikeouts.
Okay, so it was Stan. And that was going to be my choice. I thought Stan would strike out 3 times in this game. Is there a prop bet on that? There should have been. A lot of people responded to it. I was surprised how much attention that particular question got. All right, we're going to have some questions for Scoop Skolnick, and he's always dynamite on answering them. He's coming up next from 5 Reasons Sports Network, part of that brilliant Sun Sentinel sports writing staff that they had many, many years ago. Ethan Scoop Skolnick joins us next here on the Defo Show in a moment. Now that.
The time.
It's 8:35. Play the ponies in style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
Are you looking to buy your first home? Have you been turned down for a loan? Do you need to refinance or get money out of your home? Call Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. He's been helping the South Florida community get mortgages for 30 years.
Hi, this is Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. We have the most competitive fixed rates in the market. Call me 24/7, 561-441-2730. And remember, I don't just work banking hours. To make the right choice for your home, call Choice Mortgage today.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't get your question.
You were a coach that you coached all kinds of teams. You had teams that...
Hey, say it in English. Is that good?
Enjoy your trip to work with lots of laughs thanks to Defo and Lubie. Now on the Defo Show.
All right, welcome back to the show. Jump to force. We got Michael Lubie Lubitz. What's the status of Scoop Skolnick?
No clue.
Sign of the scoop? Okay.
Waiting. Talked to him last night. He was in last night. Still waiting to see if he will join us this morning.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just got the message here. I don't know why it didn't pop up. But all right. So hopefully we'll have Scoop Skolnick from 5 Reasons Sports Network talk about a variety of things, not the least of which I don't know how. What level of importance do you place this at this stage of life, Louis? Kevin Durant, where his destination will be. We know he's going to be leaving Phoenix. You would have to think that they're going to do everything in their power to deal him during the offseason. One of the teams that was mentioned, what was the New York Knicks? They have said that they're not in the hunt to get Kevin Durant, which I don't know that comes as any great surprise. The Heat were a destination supposedly of choice for Kevin Durant. We know that Pat Riley loves the guy. What they would have to give up to get him, it's interesting because you had this trade yesterday where Desmond Bane goes from the Grizzlies to the Orlando Magic. Now, Desmond Bane, good role player, not overwhelmingly stimulating in terms of, if you said Desmond Bane was coming to the Heat, how excited would you be? Say, okay.
If he gave up nothing, it'd be fine. They gave him a lot.
They ended up giving up 4 first-round picks. Now, I was reading some analysis on this, and at first you're thinking, Jesus, if Desmond Bane is worth 4 first-round picks, well, what's it going to take to get Kevin Durant? There were also players involved, though, and that was significant because it was addition by subtraction for the Orlando Magic. They got rid of Contavious Caldwell-Pope and a big fat contract.
Yeah,
and also part of that deal was Cole Anthony.
Who has a deal?
It wasn't quite as pricey as Caldwell Pope, but Cole Anthony, the son of Greg Anthony. And remember when people thought he was going to be the number 1 overall pick, and he was playing for what, North Carolina?
Carolina, yeah. He's been in.
And then he wasn't all that great at North Carolina. He slipped. I think he went somewhere mid-pack, like 13th or something.
Yep.
And that was the speculation by this particular writer that I was reading his analysis of the deal, saying, well, it looks really grotesque on the surface that that Orlando just mortgaged the farm there in the future to get a guy that was not a superstar, but maybe a piece that could fit in well. They showed and flashed potential last year. Ben Charo appears to be a legitimate star. Franz Wagner, when he's not composing symphonies, is a pretty good ball player. So you put this guy in there, and he can fill a role and make you a much more competitive team. Draft picks obviously aren't necessarily going to do much for you, especially if they're mid-pack. Although this year, supposedly, the draft is deep. I mean, is that your opinion, Lubie?
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Because if the Heat don't trade their first round pick, it's a 20th pick, which usually means nothing. But we've seen them actually do well with guys drafted in the teens to early 20s. So I hope it's a deep draft. I don't know anyone outside of Flag, so I hope that's true. I couldn't attest to that, yes or no.
I mean, your first reaction when you see a deal like that with 4 first-round picks is, who is this guy, Ollie Matson? I mean, remember, yeah, I remember when Mike Ditka wanted Ricky Williams. He traded his entire draft so that he could move up a couple of spots and get Ricky Williams. That was crazy. Great. Let's bring him in here because he would be far more adept at and qualified to see what this analysis was worth. Scoop Skolnick joins us here, of course, 5 Reasons Sports Network. We were trying to figure out whether Orlando gave away the farm there in that Desmond Bain deal. Mm-hmm. And I was mentioning that I was reading some analysis, and they dumped Caldwell Pope, I guess, and Cole Anthony. So Pope's contract for an older guy wasn't necessarily favorable. What did you think of that? Because it's not like Desmond Bain is a household name, but good player. And it seems odd because you're asking yourself, if it took 4 first-round picks and a couple of players, what's it going to take to get Kevin Durant? But what did you think of that deal, Scoop Skolnick?
Well, I think those things you got to separate a little bit, and that's we did a podcast on that on 5 on the Floor because I think, I think the Bain situation is a little unique. There have been a lot of first-round picks thrown around lately for players who are not number 1 options. We saw that with Mikal Bridges. We saw that with Rudy Gobert. And now you see that with Bain. You mentioned KCP and Cole Anthony. I think that one of the first-round picks you really could attribute to them getting off of those contracts. So I feel like that was kind of it's more 3 first-round picks, to be honest, the way that the deal's structured. And the way Orlando looks at it is they have what they think is the number 1 in Paolo Banchero. They think what they have with the number 2 in Franz Wagner. They have a defensive guy in Jalen Suggs, who's kind of their number 4 offensive option. So they're like, okay, if we can find a 3rd offensive option, this guy's done that in Memphis already. I think it's a lot, but I understand the move. The only thing that the move does is it doesn't allow them to upgrade maybe in some other ways because they've given up so many first-round picks for it. But this is kind of the cost of doing business now. And that's when we get into Durant, I think the difference is that in KD's case, you're talking about a player who wants a new contract after the season. Is going to be really expensive. 2 years probably for 120 after this upcoming year, where he's already making, north of $50 million. And of course, he's going to be 37 years old. Now, is he a better player than Desmond Bain even at this stage? I would argue yes. But if you take a look at KD's numbers last year, he had the 3rd highest scoring season of a player aged 36 or older in history. And the only 2 that were higher were 2 recent LeBron seasons. So you're talking about 2 guys who have figured out how to play deep into their 30s. LeBron has not had as many catastrophic injuries as KD has had. And KD's missed some time, but also I do think that KD's game will age well. He doesn't really go to the rim anymore. Actually, there's a crazy stat. Tyler Hero had more rim attempts last year than Kevin Durant had. So he is, at this stage, a jump shooter, but he's a great jump shooter. So that's where the Heat's interest lies here, in that he still can be really, really effective at what he does well. But Bain was a very specific need. And Orlando wanted a guard. Everybody knew they wanted a guard. Garland isn't going to be healthy for the start of next season. They were kind of looking at him from Cleveland, and so they jumped on a guard when they could.
Will Kevin Durant be wearing a Heat uniform next year, in your opinion? And is there anybody that's untouchable outside? Clearly, you would have to think that they want to team him up with Adebayo and Hero.
Right.
We hear Claire, who seems to be an emerging player, where you're asking yourself, do you really want to give up on this guy? He seems to be something that the Heat have sorely needed for the last
Right.
several seasons. Jovic, I'm not as impressed with Jovic as a lot of people. He seems okay, but I don't know. Is he really somebody that you couldn't part with? And yet there have been talks about, well, geez, if you got to give him up. What do you see happening there? Are the Miami Heat actually actively involved in this mix?
They are actively involved. I wouldn't like if you were to say the Heat against the field, would I give the Heat over 50%? No. Do I think they have as good a chance as any of these other teams that are in the mix right now? Yes. And I think that's largely because these other teams don't feel pressed right now to include certain players. And I think the Heat are in that same position. The Heat don't want to give up Ware. They don't feel they need to give up Ware. They want KD, but they're not desperate for KD. And if that sounds familiar and like the Dame situation, it should. They have a price, they have a value. They don't want to go much beyond it. I think if you were to say who wants KD most in the Heat organization, from what I've heard, it's Spo. And there is a relationship there that goes back, obviously, not just to the Olympics, but also to 2016, where they went after KD pretty aggressively. They really shouldn't have been in the mix for him because if you look at what he ended up going to, he went to Golden State to play with Curry and Clay and Draymond and win kind of a guaranteed championship. The Heat at that time only had Whiteside they were re-signing and Dragic. Wade wasn't signed, as we know. He ended up leaving for Chicago. But yet the Heat pursued KD anyway, and KD almost came to Miami simply because he was so impressed by Spo's presentation. So there's a relationship there that already exists. But I don't think that the front office, although they want KD, I don't think that they are inclined to blow everything up to get him. And blow everything up in their view means Bam, Tyler, probably Ware. Now, you mentioned Jovic. I mean, there's an offer that the Heat could put out there that's pretty obvious. And, it matches salary and essentially gives Phoenix a little bit of what they're looking for, which is Andrew Wiggins, which is a functional player who, can play probably with Booker. Not going to make you a champion or anything like that, but he's a functional player still at $30 million. Duncan Robinson, whose contract they can slice off before a certain date, and then they'll end up saving a lot of money against luxury tax, which they're way over. The 20th pick in the draft, they want draft capital this year. Now, of all the teams that are involved with Phoenix right now, the Heat have the worst of the first-round picks. They've got 20th because they don't have their own. They have Golden State's 20th instead of the 15th, which would have been their own. Other teams have higher picks. Like San Antonio has a second and the 14th. Houston has a higher pick. Minnesota has the 18th pick, I think. So they don't, but at least it's a pick in this year's draft in the top 20 for what it's worth. And then essentially you would probably trade the 2029 first round pick along with it. That would be the structure of a deal. Now you could sub in Rozier for Duncan, where they would save some money last year with their contract. So that's a possibility. I don't know. I think that he would probably prefer that, but really and then Jovic, you mentioned Jovic, and they like Jovic, but Nico's up for an extension also. And like you said, he hasn't really been healthy enough, or they haven't really found the right role for him to know exactly what he is. So I don't know that they're 100% in on giving the extension. So I said all of this to say that would be basically the offer. But, right now, Phoenix is, I think, using some media to drum up the offers. I think that's what's happening. And, Minnesota doesn't want to give up Jaden McDaniels. San Antonio doesn't want to give up Stephon Castle or the number 2 pick. Houston doesn't seem to want to give up anything. They've got a ton of young players. So the Heat are just kind of sitting there waiting for it to come back to them, essentially. And also for maybe KD to push. Now, it seems like he wants to go to one of the Texas teams, but also there's the advantage of playing in Miami. No, like Texas, no state tax, but also you're in the East. And the East is easier to get through. So I think they're going to let this play out. Could there be a mystery team in Toronto? Something? Yes, there could be. And they could lose him like they lost Dame to Milwaukee. But right now, they don't feel pressed about it.
To me, if you look at the Spurs and the Rockets, the way they're set up, I know the Rockets got pretty close last year, so they're like, shoot, if we could just get a veteran star. But to me, they have a lot of young talent, and it's almost like if we could just be patient, maybe we could be the Thunder. Like they have really. It's not that they have young talent; they have young, high level talent. That I know they're frustrated by Green, but he's shown so many flashes. Like Thompson, like when I watch them and the Pistons, it's like, man, if these teams could just be a little patient, maybe they could be the Thunder. The problem is, I get it. You have a Durant out there. You have like, how competitive would those two organizations be willing to be? Because it feels like it's almost a detriment in this day and age to try and do the stuff the Heat used to do in that day and age.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. They do have high end talent. I don't know that anybody's got an SGA, but they have high end talent. They don't want to trade Sengun. I think they would trade Jalen Green under the right circumstances. They'd rather not trade Jabari Smith if they don't have to. Amen Thompson's not going anywhere. But you take a look at the rest of the roster. They got a guy in Whitmore who probably could play in a lot of different places. He hasn't really gotten an opportunity there to play consistently. And then the Reed Shepherd, who they drafted last year, who they really like. And so, I think when you take a look at what they have, it is a question of, are you going to kind of cash in now? They don't seem to want to. Now, I thought they'd lose their first round series to Golden State, and they did in 7 games because they just didn't have that guy down the stretch to get them over the hump. Whereas, you had Curry primarily and also Jimmy on the other side. So I think they do need to make a move, but also Durant is so not on their timeline that's like they're waiting for the Giannis move, basically, or a move like that. And if Giannis is not going anywhere, then everybody's like, well, just get KD, as sort of a secondary choice there. Which, again, would he make them better? I believe so. Would he give them a guy to go to down the stretch? Yes, but you're also talking about a 36, 37-year-old when the majority of your roster is like 23, 24. So that's I think why they're not that inclined to do it. And again, it's why the Heat are not pressed, because they're kind of like, why are we going to give up the farm for a player who, it doesn't seem like any other team wants to do that for? So I look, before the draft, I think something is going to happen. I think it has to happen. If you look at Phoenix, they're prioritizing trying to get this done. It just really is a game of chicken right now. That's really what it's at. And when I've spoken to people around the Heat, I think they value KD, but when I made the comparison to the Shaq trade way back in 2004, that what they'll say is, well, first thing, Shaq was 5 years younger. Yeah, now Shaq also had slipped the previous year. People don't remember this. His scoring average in LA his last year had slipped from 27 to 21. He missed a lot of time, and they got blown out by Detroit in the finals. They did make the finals, but they got blown up. So it wasn't like people are remembering Shaq, but you're remembering Shaq from the early 2000s when, he was dominant in the finals. That really wasn't what he was the year before he came to Miami, and he wanted a contract extension. So I think there's some revisionist history there. But the difference is with Shaq, they knew as long as they kept Dwayne, because they had seen Dwayne as a rookie, and they were like, okay, we have a budding star here. As long as they kept Dwayne and they had Shaq was going to command so much attention still at that stage of his career that Dwayne was going to be play off him, and they could fill in the gaps. Durant is a jump shooter, again, so he's not going to command the constant double like Shaq commanded. And so he's a really good jump shooter, but he doesn't bend the defense like Shaq did. And so that's kind of where things are a little bit different.
All right, let's change pivot feet and not fear being called for a travel here, because I would imagine, and there is no more comprehensive Heat and or NBA source than 5 Reasons Sports Network, which was founded, of course, by the gentleman we're talking to here, Ethan Scoop Skolnick, #1 podcast or thereabouts in the NBA. You might only be trailing like Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes in that regard, and they've been coming up.
I don't know if I could pull off quite the crazy that Steven Jackson.
Well, I mean, you get some good guests on there, and they seem to be very revealing in their conversations with those two gentlemen. But I mean, in a million years, when you were watching Victor Kozlov skating figure eights out there around the blue line, or Jonathan Huberdeau passing the puck off as if he was Jamal Mashburn to Clarence Weatherspoon, could you have ever figured, Ethan Scoop Skolnick, that this was going to be a hockey town? And have you pivoted with 5 Reasons? I know you were on the ice in the Game 7 clincher, and it was a great experience for you. What's your plan for tonight, and what's your thought about tonight's game, and what's happening here and a town that used to just scream in futility, "Shoot the puck! Shoot the puck!"
Well, I mean, first thing I'll say is it's just remarkable. I think. I think, and I think you do have to put it into some perspective, because for this organization to be in this position when essentially they were the Marlins for a while,
6 years ago,
and now you look at the Marlins unable to draw 5,000 people, and you look at what the Panthers have accomplished. And I live in downtown Lauderdale, so I'm kind of in the heart of it. The Panthers store at Baptist across the street from me is always full. And you look at what's happened with watch parties when the team's not here, and everybody getting together on it. I don't have a great prediction on tonight, only because the Panthers don't seem to love prosperity, and they don't seem to love playing at home. So they always do these things the hardest possible way, and then you trust them to do it the hardest possible way because they're incredibly resilient. I don't think they've broken Edmonton like people think they have. They have done a hell of a job on McDavid, and also to a certain extent Draisaitl. They obviously have the far superior goaltending situation. I don't expect them to lose 2 straight games here. Will they win it tonight? It's hard to say. I think if you take a look at the way that their first 3 lines have played, particularly their third line, which has been incredible. I mean, you look at their third lines plus minus during the postseason. Lundell, I think, is leading them in it. They're all like double digits. Listerinen has been incredible. Of course, Marchand's been incredible. People say, well, Tkachuk hasn't been very good. He's averaging a point per game in the playoffs. And he's doing it basically. He hasn't been healthy until like the last week. And Barkov has done little things. He's won face-offs in games they've had to win them. And then you look at Verhaeghe, the way that, had a really sort of subpar regular season, blows up in the postseason. They're top 9. They're all interchangeable. Maurice, they've had trouble with the power play at home. Maurice made the change to use power play 2 more often in the last game. I think he might do that a little bit more in this one. And then the fourth line, has been really good. And yet they have a fifth line that doesn't play that could be their fourth line. So this is arguably the deepest team in South Florida sports history. Okay. I think the only teams that can compare, and this is before my time, I was in my crib, Defo, it would be the 72-73 Dolphins, of course, at a much different time where there weren't that many NFL teams, etc., as many as there are now. I think you obviously take a look at the Canes in 2001, where you had Sean Taylor backing up Ed Reed. And then I think you look at the Heat team of 12-13, probably, where they were rolling Battier and Allen off their bench. But this team is right there, and they are so much like the Islanders teams that I grew up with in the 80s. Gritty, they just don't give you anything. They keep coming line after line after line. Anybody could score the winning goal, and they get really good goaltending from an old Grizzly goaltender. And they're really well coached. Maurice is not getting enough credit for certain things. Like most teams, most coaches, you get a guy like Marchand, he would have forced him on the first line.
Yep.
He put him on the third line. He said, we're going to leave the first line alone. Now, he's made the change with Verhaeghe and Rodriguez where he's flipped the 2 of them. But other than that, he's put them on the third line. And he basically has said, to Marchand, here, you connect with Lundell and Listerine and look at the results. So do I think they win tonight? I think they win tonight. Do I think I'm going to be there till 2 a.m? And that is, by the way, that's a great experience. Like to be on the ice when they win. Like I've been there when the Heat had won 3 championships. When I was in New York, when the Marlins won the series in 2003, when they're running around the bases at Yankee Stadium and AJ Burnett is scowling at us. And I was there in 2006 when Jay Will was running around the locker room screaming, "I'm not an effing cancer," spraying us with champagne. Antoine Walker was saying he was going to drink until training camp, and he did because he ended up getting suspended in training camp. All of these things were happening, but I will say probably the best experience I've had covering a championship was being on the ice and seeing the players with their families, Barkov with his little one trying to keep him up. And I hope I get to experience it tonight. But I just have a feeling with this team that they're going to make it hard, and then they're going to win in Edmonton on Friday night.
Very, very possible. All right, one last thing, and I remember, and this was just totally exponentially out of bounds in terms of analysis when everybody was crediting the addition of Darren Dalton in 1997 as a late season acquisition that turned the fortunes of the Marlins around when they went on to win the championship. But is it fair to say that Brad Marchand, I mean, it's a thing that's happening right now, so it seems the most obvious, is the best late season acquisition that we've seen by any team here in South Florida, and maybe among the best ever in the history of sport?
It's up there. I think you mentioned Dalton. Conine was added, I think, in that, what was it, 2000? Well, he was added. Yeah.
I don't think they brought him back.
Yeah, they brought him back. Chris Anderson was not a draft acquisition, but Birdman was brought in 2013, and it precipitated the 27-game winning streak because it put everybody in their right roles. So there have been some good ones. The Heat added Tim Hardaway at the deadline, although it didn't lead to anything that year. It led to something the next year where they ended up finishing first in the East. But I would say it's definitely up there. There's no question. I mean, they got him for basically a middle schooler. I mean, the first round pick for a few years from now. And I know Boston, they're killing Sweeney, the general manager, for it. But there's also, you kind of understand it. They weren't going anywhere. And most Bruins fans are actually happy for him. It's just amazing to me how well he's fit, but also the athleticism he still has at age 37. The second goal, both goals, but the second goal, I've never seen that before. He literally pinned –
he had two guys,
stick, right?
And they had guys on him.
Yeah, it was insane. I don't know that I've seen a goal that good in a Stanley Cup Finals, and he's 37 years old. But it's also his energy. It's just he's brought something to his team. He's like, Barkov is just such a gentleman, and it's just, this team has personalities and characters and it just all fits. It's crazy. You can just tell how much they respect each other. AJ Greer was talking yesterday about their culture. Heat word. And they have it. He's like, guys want to be better than they were yesterday. He's like, that's the thing. He's like, we don't let you slack at all here. And I give Zito credit, but also Maurice. And Maurice does it kind of with a sense of humor. He's there's another conversation we're going to have here because Maurice is a top 3 coach, maybe in South Florida sports history now, if he wins this thing, right? I mean, you got to say Shula, you got to say Pat won, right? Spo won 2 with a great roster. You had the McKeon and Leland kind of 1 year, right? And you had a bunch of coaches, you could say. Probably Jimmy would probably be foremost among those, or Schnellenberger maybe. But I don't know. You go to 3 straight cups. You win 2 of them. I don't know. I mean, and they're going to keep winning. That's the thing. They're going to keep winning. They've got this team pretty much locked up, with the exception of Bennett, Marchand, and Ekblad, and I think they'll probably keep 2 of them.
No, great accomplishment if they pull this off tonight, or even if they have to go to Edmonton for game number 7. Will you be traveling to Edmonton if that takes place?
I will not.
Are you dispatching 5 Reasons Sports Network?
Yeah, I have Alex Baumgartner who wants to go, and then he showed me that I got a little sticker shock at the price on that one. So
what's Edmonton cost? Did they even have hotels there? Did they have?
The Central guys were telling me it's like $1,500 on the flight.
Oh, Jesus.
Wow. Oh, all right. Well, that's prohibited there.
Shouldn't flights be dictated on whether you'd actually want to go to the place? Like, I feel like a flight to Edmonton, they should pay you.
Yeah.
Right?
We keep saying about the series in the NBA. I mean, have you ever had anybody come up to you, maybe your daughter says, hey, Dad, can we go to Oklahoma City for a couple of days?
No.
Or
actually, I'm persona non grata in Oklahoma City, Defo, because back in 2012, when I was there late night in Bricktown and having a couple drinks, because it was really all there was to do there.
Yeah.
I tweeted that if the Thunder beat the Heat for that championship, they would have to have a parade up and down this one block. And, I can't go back. So.
Yeah, you're bulletin board material there for sure. Yeah. All right, what can we look forward to? 5 Reasons Sports Network, and how can people find you guys?
Well, first thing, catch Alex Baumgartner's work tonight, A Baumgartner 91. He'll be at the Panther game. I'll be there as well. So catch that. Also, 5 on the Floor. We're putting out a bunch of episodes on the Heat, so check those out. Dolphins taking a little bit of a break here, but we now have 3 Dolphins podcasts: 3 Yards Per Carry, Inside Leverage, and All Dolphins are all with our group now. So we'll have plenty of Dolphins coverage, and I can't say it's going to be as exciting as the Panthers season was. So
All right. Sounds good. Scoop, always a pleasure, my friend. Great stuff as always. Have fun at the game tonight. We're a little envious here that you're going to be there. I suppose we could have applied for credentials saying that we were with the Associated Press or something along those lines. But be sitting at home watching this one with a cold one or two and hopefully celebrating a Stanley Cup championship, which in a million years I could have never foreseen. So especially not 2 in a row. Thanks so much for being with us. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Ethan Scoop Skolnick. Scoop is well informed.
For the finest poultry and the freshest fish, Delaware Chicken.
Was excellent. I'll try to get
Chicken Farm is one of my favorites. You know what? That wouldn't be bad to get that fried platter and have a few people over, would it?
That's very true, but I was trying to get rid of Scoop.
That'd be nice. All right. Thanks, people, for tuning in. Good luck to the Panthers tonight. What level of anxiety will we be looking at if there turns out to be a Game 7, Lubie?
Oh, no. Look, you're going back to their house. The Panthers actually have played
getting a call from the governor, though. Those old prison movies where the guy, Carol Chessman, was going to the chair for the 8th time or into the gas chamber, and at the last second, Whitey, pull him out of there. The phone call comes as the gas is already swarming around this guy's and circling around the guy's head. Yeah, I mean, you just would hate to see it. 2 shots, 2 to make 1 here.
Yeah, look, you want to end it tonight. I'm always of the belief, don't give a team any momentum.
Exactly.
But we've seen this team be strong in those situations. They fight against the wall as well as anyone. I'd rather, as a fan, not deal with that. I'd rather celebrate on the home ice. I'm like Scoop. I don't know. They don't seem to handle prosperity well. This is 3 years we've seen this, where series go usually a game or 2 longer than they need to.
Well, and this gets back to your point about yanking Bobrovsky in that game that you thought he should have been taken out of.
This is that game. I wouldn't have taken him out of the series.
The last thing you need right now is goaltender anxiety, and you would have to say, with no clear cut, the decision you would have to think is going to be go back to Skinner, because as we said, backup goalies come into games many, many times and they look good, and then they start them in the next game and they get absolutely annihilated.
Yes.
And that was the case in this last game in Edmonton, where Pickard just he couldn't stop a bowling ball from 50 feet away. That's just not a favorable condition for me. I'm saying Panthers tonight, 4-1. 4-1 Panthers. Stanley Cup championship comes here. We'll be at the Elbow Room tomorrow to celebrate. What do you think?
That'd be wonderful. That would be a game like we just saw. Would be fantastic to be able to actually just celebrate and not have to hold your breath for 60 minutes. Fantastic.
All right, Lubie. Have a great one. Enjoy the game. Everybody, we'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll have a little old school brought to you by Texas Roadhouse with Tony Segredo. We'll get his thoughts on this thing. And we will see you tomorrow morning at 8 here on the next edition of the show. So for Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks to Scoop Skolnick for joining us. We'll see you next time as we leave you now that.
The time.
Oh, and I do want to give a heads up for our Bleacher Brothers viewers here on the Defo show. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock, Conversations. I did get a hold of Mike Donald, who I saw tremendous parallels between Mike Donald, even though he lost, and J.J. Spawn. It took a remarkable putt from Hale Irwin to force a playoff in the 1990 U.S. Open. I was talking to Mike yesterday. He says to me, can you believe this was 35 years ago?
That's
35
crazy.
years ago. So he's going to join us. And also, I believe we will feature an original member of the Miami Heat crew, Scott Hastings.
Oh, nice.
Join us on the show. So, and he's always very caustic and he's been a commentator for a long, long time. And you could tell he was going to be a good one because he always had a sense of humor in interviews, even though I think he only averaged like 2 points a game as a member of the Miami Heat. But played for many teams in the NBA and always has very astute observations about what's going on in basketball. So Mike Donald ran, he got $110,000 for finishing second, losing an 18-hole playoff the next day to Hale Irwin. And he, the runner-up this year, I think, got $2 million. So big differential 35 years later. As a winner, made $4 million for winning the U.S. Open, J.J. Spawn. And Scott Hastings, that'll be tomorrow about 10 o'clock on Bleacher Brothers. So tune in for that. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time as we leave you on that.
The time.
It's 9:09.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.